I do caution against the idea of a Conservative Reform merger, though, at least under the jurisdiction of Kemi Badenoch, who has decided, rather than address her own unpopularity and inability to capitalize on obvious political opportunities, to complain, let's say privately, but then it got leaked anyway, so purposefully, about Liz Truss making noise about the fact that she was cooed out by the banks and the deep state.
Breaking right now, Suella Braverman, the former Conservative Home Secretary who remains a Tory, has called for there to be some type of official union between Kemi Badenoch's struggling party and Nigel Farage's Reform UK. According to The Spectator, the former Tory Home Secretary lauded Donald Trump's style of unfiltered conservatism and said her party should follow his lead in making the unsayable mainstream. She insisted the formula to beat Labour involved the Tories and Reform working together. And this is what she said. She said, "I like Nigel Farage," before stressing there isn't enough space in British politics for two conservative parties. She added, "We do need to unite the right. We need to come to some kind of accommodation. I don't know what the precise form looks like, whether that is a merger, whether that is a coalition, whether that is a supply and confidence agreement, whether that is a non-aggression pact. I don't know what it looks like. In general, I am in favour of unifying the right." Now, perhaps not a surprise she says this, given Reform's membership has now surpassed the Tories, and her own husband, a really great guy, Raoul Braverman, has also joined Reform UK, and there they both were with Nigel Farage in Washington, D.C. So look, Connor, I guess you're probably like me, I assume anyway, in thinking, oh, Suella, come on, you're such a good woman. Just get out, have the balls, have the bravery to just leave. But I have had private conversations with her about this, Connor, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying this. You know, the Conservative Party is in her blood. It's something she feels incredibly... Leaving is not such a simple option, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yes, again, I won't leak private conversations. I actually ran into Suella while I was out there, so it was very nice to see her again. Similar sentiment was expressed. She's not the sort of person to just jump ship without good reason, let's put it. And she does have plenty of friends in Reform, and she's always stood firm on the fact, as I have, that the Conservatives persecuting Lee Anderson and kicking him out of the party for making obvious statements about Sadiq Khan's Islamist sympathetic career as a human rights lawyer was a great big mistake. And so, hey, maybe the teal waters look quite nice this time of year. I do caution against the idea of a Conservative Reform merger, though, at least under the jurisdiction of Kemi Badenoch, who has decided, rather than address her own unpopularity and inability to capitalize on obvious political opportunities, to complain, let's say privately, but then it got leaked anyway, so purposefully, about Liz Truss making noise about the fact that she was cooed out by the banks and the deep state. I have it on good authority that Badenoch is not going to get what she wants in terms of shutting Liz up. Liz has a tendency to make headlines. I think if Badenoch has that very contemptuous perspective towards the exact types of people that Reform should be embracing, it's unlikely that the Conservatives are going to be merging at this time. And frankly, I think it would behoove Reform to take a large amount of Conservative refugees anyway. I can name probably about 5 good MPs, Suella being one of them, that I think would be an asset for Reform to take in. But if Reform were to take in, for example, Priti Patel, the architect of the immigration policy which would have immiserated this country and who remains unapologetic about it, I think it would be disastrous for them, because they're trying to present as a non-establishment alternative to the uniparty which has wrecked this country. And so they need to avoid becoming a conservative refugee camp in order to build a broad and credible coalition in order to set the country on a right track. And I do think Suella would be a good member of that. I just don't see her defecting anytime soon.
No, not at this point. Then, of course, Connor, you've got the other big debate on the right that's going on. And this actually concerns the positioning of Reform UK and the fact that Elon Musk has pulled his support for Nigel Farage's leadership because of Nigel's position on Tommy Robinson. And what we don't know at this point is how much that's impacted Donald Trump's support of Nigel Farage. It is interesting, though, isn't it? He wasn't actually there at the inauguration. He didn't get the invite into the US Capitol. He would have been there, I should stress, if it was outside when there were a whole load more people who were going to be able to go. But the first signs of this split actually potentially doing Nigel some real damage in Trump world. So this is Brian Lanza, big-time Trump guy. He was a senior advisor for this most recent campaign, deputy communications director for Trump right back in 2016. So this guy knows Trump really, really well. He went on the Robert Peston show on Woke ITV last night and made it pretty clear that Donald is going to side with Elon over Farage. Have a look at what he had to say, and I'll get your reaction off the back.
Musk massively criticised Nigel Farage, said he wasn't fit to lead the Reform Party. Do you think that will influence Trump? Do you think Trump will be less friendly to Farage now?
Listen, I think Trump's friendly to a lot of people, a lot of heads, a lot of world leaders, a lot of politicians. That what makes everybody uncomfortable. So he'll continue to be friendly with Farage. But I think
would that have? Does he listen to Musk? Would that have damaged, in a sense, the president's view of Farage?
I believe so. Listen. What I've learned over the years as President Trump is that he puts a lot of weight in people who've created things, disruptive people who've created things. And there's nobody in the world today that's the most disruptive who's created wealth than Elon Musk. So he's going to listen to what Elon has to say in these things, and it's going to have an impact. It's going to matter. I mean, Nigel Farage is a much smaller person today in Donald Trump's eyes than he was 2 weeks ago as a result of Elon's tweet and engagement on this issue.
Interesting, Connor Tomlinson. What do you make of it?
I would be surprised if Trump were to burn a near decade-long friendship over a little bit of a falling out between Musk and Farage. I will say that what Trump should be prioritizing to reform's benefit is franchising MAGA. Now, MAGA is an incredibly popular mainstream movement which has fantastic policies and hit the ground running on day one, keeping all of his promises and making real, lasting and substantial legislative change. And that's exactly what we need come 2029 in the UK. We need to repeal lots of laws on the books. We need to disband the horrendous civil service. We've already discussed Raiku and the propaganda department of the Home Office. They need to go on day one. Otherwise, the agenda will be frustrated. We need to deport foreign criminals. We need to get fracking and get energy bills down and the like. Trump is doing all those things. And he's also doing it with the mandate of the American electorate. And so what he should be doing is assisting populist national parties like the AfD in Germany, National Rally in France, Reform UK, despite Nigel's uncomfortableness with some of those European parties. Trump should be fashioning them in his image to their benefit. And so, look, I can't pretend to know behind-the-scenes conversations that may or may not have been had while they were out in DC together, but I do think that over the long term, especially considering Musk himself once disparaged Trump and is now a close confidant, that relationships between Musk and Farage should be rebuilt. I would anticipate that Trump and Farage are still friends, and there should be a cross-pollination between the parties and political strategies to get reform on the right track to be the party that we in Britain need.
It's interesting. Jeremy Kyle on Talk TV actually asked Nigel directly in regards to Musk and if they'd met up when he was out there for the inauguration. They hadn't. But then, and this has sparked a big reaction from Tommy Robinson, which I'll show you in just one moment, but then Nigel went to attacking Tommy Robinson again. So watch this. But first, the reason you're watching this show is because you know that these days it's almost impossible to trust the mainstream media or the so-called fact checkers who claim to patrol social media. And I mean, that's for a very good reason, given what we've seen today with the Southport massacre, or Brexit, or COVID, or the demonization of Donald Trump. So I have the solution. Today's sponsor, Ground News, created by a former NASA engineer to provide you with the only safe way to consume the headlines. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out for yourself. But I want to actually show you, the best thing to do here is show you this incredible website and app in action. So what we're going to do is take the recent story of Elon Musk's fallout with Nigel Farage over Tommy Robinson, which the left-wing legacy media tried to whip up to destroy all three men. And you can see very clearly on Ground News, which collates the 230 sources all in one place. And it instantly shows how the story is being covered by the media, broken down whether those media organizations lean left or right, illustrated by this bias distribution service. And then if you scroll down, you can see every article about the topic broken down by the political position and ownership of the publication. So in this case, you can see quite clearly that Fox News gave a fair analysis compared to Mediarite and The Independent, which most certainly did not, lambasting the men as morons with big egos, actually looking into why, without actually looking into why, why the split happened, how it could be resolved. But what's more is Ground News actually gets to know you personally, providing you with the news stories you're interested in, while also analysing your own biases and coming up with potential blind spots you may not have heard about. And I know if you're like me, you love the news, but you don't trust the legacy media. So Ground News gives you the tools to understand the truth about what is going on in the world. I can tell you it is the only way. I read the news now. I have the app on my phone and it allows me to see through media bias and manipulative narratives. No more relying on MSM bias to define the truth for you. So go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. You can subscribe through my link for 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. Thank you, Ground News. And remember, Ground News is subscriber funded and supporting it also supports my work too. So for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all the world's news in one place and think for yourself. It's been a game changer for a news junkie like me. So that is ground.news/outspoken. But now back to the show.
We're desperately trying to get together to have a meeting. It didn't quite make it happen, but we're on good speaking terms. We have a different point of view. He views Tommy Robinson in a different light to me. He's even going to help fund some of his legal expenses. Fine, do what you want, Elon. That's great. The issue is that, I have never wanted... There is a genuine far right, okay? They're very, very small in number, but I've never, ever wanted them to be part of this political party. And I've never thought Tommy Robinson is someone that I should open my arms up to and embrace. So, fine, some people see him as a hero for standing up and talking about grooming gangs. I just don't think he's right for me politically. And I think we've sort of reached a point where Elon and I now understand each other on that.
Tommy Robinson not happy on his official account. Tommy isn't looking for validation or for an endorsement from you, Nigel Farage. He doesn't want to and never has asked to join your party, despite your insistence on inferring he does. Oh, and stop effing lying about him, you tedious little toad. Not one apology for falsely claiming Tommy had convictions for violence against women. And of course, Connor, what we do know now is that Tommy Robinson is having his legal case funded by Elon Musk. So this is becoming a more formal relationship. What do you make of Nigel's comments, but also the response from Tommy Robinson?
So I'm going to try and steelman what I think Reform is doing here and then critique it because I don't agree with the strategy. I think they've made the electoral calculation that your average, let's say, less online voter who doesn't know the nuances of Tommy Robinson's positions being essentially indistinguishable from Douglas Murray, and that he's a civic nationalist who's a big fan of Israel and just doesn't like radical Islam. I think people that see Tommy Robinson as synonymous with far right will be put off if Nigel doesn't constantly disavow him. And so they think they have a larger vote share to win by disavowing Tommy Robinson than the vote share that they might lose by upsetting their base, which until very recently, the Venn diagram between those attending the Unite the Kingdom rally and Reform supporters was a circle. They were one and the same. I think that strategy is misguided only because you don't need to bring up Tommy Robinson as a boogeyman on behalf of a hostile media who will hate you anyway, because Nigel at the moment is bringing Tommy Robinson up of his own volition. He didn't need to actually mention him in relation to Musk there unless Jeremy Kyle would have pressed him, for example. He didn't need to invoke the term far right, which then legitimates the narrative that the very hostile press will also level at him. Because if you use their terminology, you're buttressing their worldview, and their worldview would rather see you dead than victorious, Nigel. I'd very much like to see him victorious at this stage. And so all Nigel needs to do is, again, take the Douglas Murray line on this thing. All you need to say is the issues that made Tommy Robinson possible are only there because the British public have been betrayed by a political and a media establishment that has lied about mass immigration and multiculturalism. Reform has inherited this mess, and we will clean it up, and Tommy Robinson will no longer be necessary. And I think, frankly, Robinson himself would quite like to go back to a quiet life after his various stints of being in prison, with the country fixed and in a fit state, than be the topic of constant media scrutiny.
Well, he
So I
certainly
think that's
doesn't.
a wider strategy.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't want to be part of a political movement. He has made that abundantly clear. He wants to continue a cultural movement. So I think, personally, I think Nigel could have played it differently, but I do understand it is a difficult position to be in. But Connor Tomlinson, so brilliant to have you. Very excited that we're going to have you as part of the Outspoken family throughout 2025, but a sad day, obviously. And just looking at our poll today, and I'm really glad actually that you've broadly agreed with me on this. Should the MSM censor the horrific open court details about the Southport massacre? 87% of you say no, just 13% of you say yes. And I know a lot of that content was really difficult, but my view is that we have to talk about it. And I've been interested to see what you've had to say throughout the course of this special show. From Barfly Voices, every PMQs should be said to care that he is complicit and should be classed as an accomplice to murder. LB says, thank goodness for channels like this where we can get the truth. The UK seems to be what they tell us it's like in North Korea. Protect British Culture wrote, I find it impossible to believe his parents, especially his father, did not have any knowledge of their son's own intentions. And again, I repeat about that. We need to know. Why is there total silence around what the parents knew? I find that completely bizarre. Gary Munden sums it up just very, very simply. 2 words of massive importance. Starmer knew. And yes, he did know. Jack said these were little girls, not women, and we all know why he did it. He's in jail going to mosque and his prayer sessions, and he's got a job already. It's because of the ideology he follows. And Diane says, I now believe my own country treats me as racist. It is obvious that everyone other than the true British-born people have all the rights and help. Time to stand up for our freedom. So lots of anger from you, but I am glad because I wasn't sure how you would feel about me sharing those more difficult details from court. Obviously, you know, Sly News and GB News decided to censor them today. So I'm glad that 87% of you backed my decision to do so. My view is that to understand evil, we have to know about evil. And I don't like this censorship state. What is the idea with the UK becoming some sort of censorship state? Everything's censored now. Even open court is now censored, and that's not how our society is meant to work. Of course, it is your choice if the details are too difficult and you want to switch off. And I've seen lots of people saying that today. People who I respect, like Adam Brooks, as a father, he just said, I cannot listen to this. That is fine. That is a personal choice. But I don't believe it should be the establishment or the mainstream media who are making that decision to censor it.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.